So, good afternoon, Bristol. It's Pat Hart here for BCfm Radio, reporting live from College Green. Now, very, very shortly, Jeremy Corbyn is going to be speaking to thousands of people already gathering onto College Green. We've been told by some of the Labour press office that many of the candidates for Bristol will be here as well, alongside Mayor Marvin Rees, who's going to speak as well. And we'll have a little look there a little bit later on, but it is getting really packed on College Green. Lots of dignitaries, lots of Labour supporters, and quite possibly some Labour opposition as well. We've also been told that Prime Minister Boris Johnson is visiting the southwest today, but that location has been kept completely secret. So the location that we know about is College Green. That's where Jeremy Corbyn is going to be, and we'll be trying to catch up with him and hearing what he's got to say very, very shortly. So stay tuned to the Facebook Live feed right here on BCfm Radio.
Just giving you a little look at how many people there are here today at College Green, and an amazingly diverse crowd as well, which I guess is pretty heartening, really. What do you think, Pat?
Mate, it really is. I was surprised just when I arrived here by the amount of people gathering, but I didn't actually realise it would end up being so ram-packed. And of course, this was supposed to have been kept pretty quiet. There was a early morning or late night last night press release out from some of the Labour Party people. So this has been quite amazing, and I think there are more people to come.
I think you're absolutely right, because we think Jeremy Corbyn's due to start talking at about probably at about 2:45, I'd imagine by now. There will be other politicians speaking, or candidates, I should say, for the various parliamentary constituencies, either in Bristol or around Bristol as well. So we're expected to hear from them first of all, of course. But people are stretched out as far as the eye can see, right across the College Green.
And if I explain, we're right on the press gantry, so it's almost like every man or woman or anyone for themselves here trying to get. I'm going to try and give you a little bit of a look. It's Bristol Post here. Look. So we've got lots of our TV camera crew and other press as well, with their tripods loaded on quite a small platform. So it's going to be really difficult to catch views. However, at least we're elevated. Many of the people in the crowd, of course, are not going to be able to see much. And I've seen people with their small children, young children, in the crowds as well. So what they're going to see, I don't know. But many people are just saying they want to be here for the atmosphere. It's an experience for them. Not all of them Labour supporters. Some people undecided, but they just want to see what Jeremy Corbyn has to say.
Yes, indeed, and it's not necessarily about what people can see. I suppose it's also about what people can hear as well, because I'm sure everybody here will be interested to hear what Jeremy Corbyn has to say. Just, what is it now? 3 days before the general election. And you're absolutely right, Pat. There are people here who aren't necessarily Jeremy Corbyn supporters, but they are Labour supporters. We bumped into one outside the big red bus just earlier on who really wanted to have a chat with Jeremy Corbyn. I doubt that was going to happen. So there you go. Still waiting for the speakers to come out, and Jeremy Corbyn as well.
And I was going to say something as well. We know what happened in 2017. We know what's happened before with some quite extreme people with extreme views, and politics has become very, very toxic. And unfortunately, we need to have large police presence every time a high-profile politician is in any area, simply because of that threat of violence. There will always be people wound up that want to be extremely nasty. And unfortunately, it's something that we worry about in politics, isn't it?
That is something we worry about, and of course there have been fatalities over the past year or two as well. I'm thinking particularly of the Joe Cox incident, but surprisingly, policing visibility is extremely low indeed. There's probably about half a dozen officers that we can see here at the rear of the stage. There's probably quite a few hidden about elsewhere as well, of course. But generally speaking, the mood here is pretty peaceful. I'm sure there'll be a lot of cheering and crowd waving, crowd cheering going on later on. But in terms of security, it's pretty much pretty invisible, really.
So we're waiting, and we're waiting.
And we're waiting, yeah.
But at least there's a little bit of music through the PA system, and it looks as though the crowd are going to be able to hear everything okay. So all of the employees, or so many of the employees from City Hall, are looking out of the windows. We'll maybe get some of those shots shortly. We don't know where Mr. Corbyn is, or indeed where some of these parliamentary candidates are. We've been told that the Mayor, Marvin Rees, is going to be speaking as well. Ivan, what are you expecting?
Do you know what? I'm not sure at this stage, like 3 days before the election, what politicians can say to actually change minds. Whether they're able to give reassurance to their potential voters, that's another question, really. But I suppose this is more like a morale boosting thing, I guess, today. And don't forget, you know what? This is one of the few rallies where we've actually seen one of the political leaders actually attend in person and address the public in Bristol. Because I don't think we've seen any of the others do that yet.
Well, we haven't seen him yet. The plan is that he will be here. But I think so many people have said they're undecided. And I think that depending on which opinion polls you listen to, some people are saying, look, Labour are getting really close now to the Conservatives. Other opinion polls in some of the Tory-led press are saying, no, the gap is widening. And surely rallies like this will help bolster the confidence of maybe potential Labour voters that are thinking, do you know what? I am going to go out and vote, possibly.
Yeah, you mentioned undecideds, actually, and a really interesting figure is that about 9% of men are undecided, but 17% of women are undecided. So women are forming a very crucial part of the undecided vote, actually, almost twice as many as the men.
Well, let's see what happens, and let's see what kind of reaction some of these politicians will get, especially Jeremy Corbyn, very shortly.
The last few days of this campaign, we're in Wales yesterday, we're covering the southwest today, we're going to the Midlands, we're going to the northwest, we're going to Scotland, we're going to the northeast, we're going to the East Midlands, and we'll finish off in London, because we're a party with a message for the whole country. And that message for the whole country is quite simply this. There is a very, very, very clear choice before the people of this country on Thursday, and it's this. We've had 9 years of austerity in Britain. We've had 9 years of increasing gap between the richest and the poorest. We've had 9 years in which 150 people have become billionaires in Britain. We've had 9 years during which 4 million children are living in poverty. We've had 9 years when our local councils, our health service, and so many other services have been cut to the bone by the meanness of a central government more interested in creating the wealth for the wealthiest rather than a sustainable living for the poorest. And this Christmas, 130,000 children across Britain will wake up on Christmas morning not knowing they have a safe, secure place to call their home for the rest of this year, never mind next year. That is the reality of what austerity has done to people all across this country. And there are thousands who are sleeping rough on the streets of this country. And when the UN says the consensus of the past, the welfare state of the past, has been replaced by a cold and uncaring ethos, they are dead right. When the UN condemns the process of austerity in modern Britain, the 5th richest country in the world, don't you think it's time to get rid of the government that brought that about? And so, our manifesto, carefully written, fully costed, will be put before the people of this country on Thursday, so that we can elect a government that is determined to start the process of changing things around, of looking after people all across Britain. And I am determined that we win that election to do that. We need to gain constituencies to be made all across the southwest. I was in Falmouth and Truro the week before last, supporting them, and I'm going up to the West Midlands today. And so, all across the country, basically the message is the same. Carry on with the Tories, and that's what you get. With Labour, you will get investment. You will get that sense of security for the future. And you will get the protection of our National Health Service. The Daily Mirror today shows this picture. I'll turn it round so everyone can see it. This picture of a 4-year-old boy suffering from pneumonia being treated on the floor of a hospital. And people ask questions about this, and I simply say this. The Tories have had 9 years to fund our NHS properly. It's time to bring their regime to an end and elect a Labour government that's determined to fund our NHS properly. But there's another threat to the NHS, a very big threat to the NHS, and that is the secret talks. The secret talks that have gone on for 2 years between the Tory government and the United States administration. Because Boris Johnson really wants a no-deal Brexit straight into the arms of Donald Trump and a trade deal with them. And it's very clear to me that trade deal with the United States, that trade deal would put all of our public services at risk into the hands of global corporations. And they would open up what they gently call our health market. Well, I've got news for them. There is no health market. We shut that down in 1948 when we established the National Health Service. Healthcare free at the point of need for all. Labour will offer people the choice over the relationship with Europe. But we will not be undercutting wages, ruining conditions, destroying workers' rights. We will instead be sensible, principled and responsible by bringing people together. And that is exactly what we will do. And I want us to say this about hopes for the future. I've spoken at rallies on this green before, and I've been delighted to stand alongside Marvin and many others in the campaign to win in Bristol and to win all across the country. Our young people have been so grievously treated by austerity and so grievously treated by this government. I want our schools to be properly funded. I don't want head teachers collecting money to keep the schools together. I don't want head teachers having to choose between a Senko and another job. I want the schools properly funded. And I want our young people to be able to make the choice of going to do a vocational course or an apprenticeship or go to university. But a choice, not a choice of how much debt they have to go into to go to university. So our manifesto makes it very clear, our National Education Service will properly fund education and will end student fees and adult education fees once and for all. And we will raise the tax necessary to do it, because our National Investment Bank will support every region of Britain with the infrastructure needs that it has. And give people some hope on housing, where so many are living in expensive, unregulated, private rented sector flats, spending so much on deposit to get one and not having the security of tenure when they're there. I want to lead a government that builds council houses, that builds 100,000 council homes a year, which begins the process of housing people properly and ending the disgrace of rough sleeping across our society. And so our election campaign comes almost to a close. But all of you, I say this, many people make up their minds in the last few days of the campaign. We'll be campaigning right up until 10 o'clock on Thursday night. We'll be taking that message out all over the country. The tens of thousands of Labour supporters and members that have been out door knocking and listening to people about their concerns. What comes back is people are either going to be frightened of the future under a Tory government with the continued cuts in public spending and all the divisions it creates in society, or a Labour government with the enthusiasm and popular support to carry through our manifesto, carry through our promises to deliver for the people of this country, and a government that on the world stage will be standing up for peace, for justice and for human rights. And the greatest issue that faces every one of us on this wonderful green here in Bristol is actually the threat to our natural world and environment through global warming and climate change. I was at the Paris Climate Change Conference in 2015. It was, yes, a huge step forward, but not big enough and not determined enough. Under present trends, Britain won't reach net zero until 2099. The rest of the world, goodness knows when. Next year, COP26 will be held in Britain. I want to be there as a Labour Prime Minister hosting COP26. And my lifetime's determination to defend our natural world and our environment, and our manifesto, which promises a green industrial revolution so the jobs of the future help the sustainability of our natural world and our planet. And all the industries and all the skills that are here in Bristol, and all the determination of people all across the west of England and the far southwest to live in a sustainable world and protect the natural world, will be a combination of investment in sustainable transport, of electric buses, retrofitting homes so they use less energy, development of green energy projects, and the role that the public sector and public ownership can bring. But also things like broadband, which help to develop economies in a rural area and also are themselves sustainable. So I finish with this because I've got many, many places to go. I want to thank you for being here. Thank you for your support for Labour. Thank you for your determination to elect a Labour government. And thank you for the hope you give to so many. So on Thursday, vote for hope, vote for change, vote for a Labour government. Thank you very much.
So there we have it, Jeremy Corbyn speaking live in Bristol. 3 days to go to the general election. Many, many undecided voters. And if some newspapers had their way, they may think that the Tories are going to get a landslide, but not necessarily by this reaction in Bristol. It seems that Bristol is red.